Today's video, we are comparing the Nord N30 and the Samsung A54. This Nord N30 retails for $299, and for that price, you get a 6.7-inch display, 108 megapixel camera, a 5,000 milliamp battery, and 128 gigabytes of storage with an SD card slot. Now, in the other hand, this is the Samsung A54, and this retails for $449. But as of today, you can find it as low as $327 on Amazon. Now, looking at the specs, you get a 6.4-inch display, a 50 megapixel camera, 5,000 milliamp battery, and the same 128 gigabyte of storage and an SD card slot. So looking solely at specs, the Nord is a better phone. But you know what we gotta do. We gotta talk about the experiences while using the phones. And don't worry, we'll get to cameras because there is a lot to say. You know, in the hand, the A54 feels very premium. It feels just like the Samsung Galaxy S23 lineup. Sure, there's a little bit more plastic on this phone, but Samsung did a great job with the build of the phone. And the Nord just kind of feels budget, like it feels like its price tag. That's not a bad thing, but when comparing it directly to the A54, you can definitely feel the difference. With the Nord, the edges are a bit sharp and it kind of digs into my palm, and I don't feel very comfortable with it in my hand. You know, due to the size and just the overall, I would say, squareness, the Nord just isn't a comfortable phone. A lot of phones at this size would have sort of curved edges a little bit, just enough to fit in your hand. While this screen is completely flat and people love flat phones, I do find it a little bit harder to hold at something at this size. And also, this phone gets a ton of fingerprints on the back. It is that glossy plastic that gets smudges really bad, and it just sort of loses that premium feel. And also the haptics, they feel sort of loose. Loose haptics is a recipe for phones feeling sort of budget. Also, the A54 is water and dust resistant at IP67, and the Nord doesn't have any of that. Now, I did talk about fingerprints on the Nord, but there's a good thing with fingerprints, and that's the fingerprint scanner. It's actually located on the side of the phone. And what I like about side fingerprint scanners is that my hand naturally rests in the right spot to unlock the phone. Every single time, you just tap it and it unlocks the phone. And I really like that. Now, the A54 has it built into the screen, and that works pretty good too, but I just prefer it on the side because if you take a look, I have to tap the screen, to tap it down here. It just takes a little bit longer. It's a lot slower than just tapping the side button here. And so for me, I gotta give the nod to the Nord. It's easier to get into. Now, speaking of screens, the A54 screen is better than the Nord. It's an OLED. The whites look better, the blacks look better, and the colors are better as well. I mean, the list can go on and on about how it's a better screen. It's just a better display day to day, and it's very noticeable. Now, for the price, the Nord does provide a solid screen. The colors are pushed to the cool side, which I instantly noticed as soon as I turned the phone on. I will say the Nord does have better viewing angles since it's LCD compared to OLED. But look, the Nord's display just isn't bad, but when comparing it to the A54, you can see what a better display looks like. But I will give Nord credit. At this price, we have a high refresh display. So scrolling between apps, launching apps, everything feels faster. The A54 has this too, but the Nord has it at a lower price, which I think is pretty dope. The Nord also has a Snapdragon 695, which I think is more than enough for most people to do everyday tasks. So look, you can game on it, and for the most part, it'll run exactly how you expect without much lag or even input delay. But if you do play high-end games, like a game that I love to play is called Battle Prime or even Asphalt 9, you know, during those intense scenes, things will start to slow down a bit. Also, battery drain is very evident with gaming, and also temperatures. It can reach up to 35 degrees Celsius after a hardcore gaming session. With the A54, the speed is nearly identical to the Nord. When using the phone side by side, there isn't a major difference when launching apps. But I will say when gaming, the A54 does it a little bit smoother. And when doing a benchmark in 3D Mark, this is confirmed as well. Now, doing the Wildlife Extreme Stress Test, it landed a score of 809 compared to the score of 363 on the Nord. What do those numbers actually mean? So that means the processor and the GPU on the A54 handles gaming much better. And we're talking high-end games. If you're playing very basic games, you're not gonna see anything between the two, but we're talking these higher end games that requires more processing. The A54 should handle that much better than the Nord. So if you're a gamer, A54 is probably going to be your pick between these two phones. Software-wise, both OSs have a lot going for them. Now, both companies push out updates often, so don't worry about getting updates. Also, I do love the A54 feel because it feels like other Samsung phones. It's consistent, you know what you're gonna get. It may be a little bit boring now because Samsung hasn't updated their software and just the look and feel in such a long time, but it's consistent. And you know it's gonna work great and the apps are gonna run well. Nord is running Oxygen OS, which feels like a custom version of Android. And there are so many more customizations you can do, which for some people like me, the more options you give me, the better. I love going into all the options and making little changes like changing the theme, changing the way the icons look, if they're circle, if they're square, all those little things that you can do on a Oxygen OS device that you really can't do on other skins on Android. So look, at this point, software-wise, it's a crapshoot. I think they're both great and it depends on what you want. Do you want true and tried and tested, or do you want something fun where you can really explore and dig into settings and actually customize the phone to your liking? So for a lot of people, the deciding factor comes down to cameras. So these days, megapixels doesn't matter that much. I mean, Google has shown it with the Pixel series. You don't have to have the biggest megapixel out there. It really comes down to software and also optics quality. But with that being said, guys, this is a whopping 108 megapixels. And the A54 has a 50 megapixel sensor. The A54 has a wide, ultra wide, and also zoom sensor. Whereas the N30 has your standard wide, and then you have two little sensors right here. One is for macro, and also one is gonna be a depth sensor. They're both 2 megapixels. It's very interesting that the Nord went this route. Let's see if it paid off. When taking a look at some shots side by side, both cameras have outstanding detail in daylight. When punching in on the photos a bit more, the details do stick around, which is great. In these examples, you'll see that the A54 has better colors in these shots. The green is much more vibrant, and the processing seems to be just much better overall. In comparison, the Nord can look a bit soft in some spots, but yet sharp in other areas. And when you switch to 108 megapixel mode, then you'll see much more details throughout the whole image. It's definitely hard to tell in video, but it's evident on the screen. Now, I don't recommend walking around in 108 megapixel mode, but if you're taking a shot of something massive and something you want to get all the details in, definitely switch over to that mode at that point. The macro mode is fun to play with, giving you a pretty cool looking perspective, and I think the macro mode is actually solid on the Nord. As I mentioned, the A54 has better colors, but also does better in low light modes in all situations. And this is true for macro mode too. When it comes to the front-facing camera, it's 32 megapixels on the A54, and the Nord gives you 16 megapixels. In my real-world testing, I found that the A54 just took better shots. The color, the depth, so on and so forth, and this also carries over to video on both lenses too. Although the Nord did put up a good fight in these camera samples, I think the Nord's camera just doesn't hold up to something a little bit better. This is the front-facing camera on the Samsung Galaxy A54. This is the front-facing camera on the Nord. Let me know which camera is better between the Nord and also the A54. But once again, when you're in this $300 price range, you really can't expect anything more than what the Nord is giving you. You do have solid images and some pictures can come out really good, but once you get away from that great light source, images start to fall apart. And so this takes us to battery life. And the way I test battery lives, I don't set the phone on a table and play a video, no. I put the SIM card in the phone and I use it as I normally use a phone, and then I compare the results. And guys, both phones were nearly the same. One night, the Nord got me 25% at the end of the day. I was at 25%, and the A54 was like at 26%, and vice versa. Depending on how I use the phones, they were pretty much lock steady as far as battery life. They both have very big batteries and efficient CPUs, so it doesn't surprise me that you can eke out a full day and a little bit more too, depending on your usage. Now, the Nord does charge faster, and it also has a faster charging brick in the box. Plugging it in for 30 minutes, you can get around 70% of battery. And for those reasons, I would say the Nord has better battery life. And that's one thing that OnePlus does very well, and that is fast charging. And OnePlus, if you're come a little closer, OnePlus, if you're watching this video, don't ever take away the fast charging. At the end of the day, the A54 is a better phone. If you want to see more smartphone reviews, check out this playlist.